This is the Vanderhall Carmel, and from where I'm standing, it's one of the wackiest vehicles I've seen this year. So let's take a closer look and see what makes this thing tick. Now, long-time viewers of the channel will recall that I've driven several Vanderhall models over the years, and it seems like every year they're constantly tinkering and tuning and refining how their whole platform works. And now the Carmel is their latest offering. So, here are the key facts. 2 seats, 3 wheels, 2 up front, 1 in the back. Crucially, it's front wheel drive, which makes it very different from like a slingshot, for example. Okay, so the Vanderhall is a small boutique car built out of Utah, and for perspective, they're looking to sell around 2,000 to 3,000 units this entire year. So it's entirely likely you may not have even seen one of these before in person. It's a very unique looking vehicle. All Vanderhalls have this same basic pulled back style where they're kind of wide and broad at the front and they kind of taper at the back like this. Though you'll notice from previous Vanderhall models, aficionados of the brand will notice, the Carmel is notably larger looking than previous models like, say, the Venice, for example. While they're on the same chassis and the same basic frame, it seems like the Carmel has kind of widened out the edges here to kind of make a little bit more usable interior volume. Speaking of interior volume, we now have conventional doors, which is a bit different for Vanderhall. Well, as conventional as Vanderhall will get. See, there's a pull strap. Pull like that, and they are suicide doors that pull like this. Now, Vanderhall has been taking notes from other power sports industries and taking these to events like Sturgis and things like that, and they heard a common complaint is that people didn't want to crawl up and over into the cars, so hence the suicide doors on this Carmel. Now, hopping inside here, you can see this car has the full leather interior, so it's leather bucket seats, leather door cards, and the leather wrapped dash, as well as things like floor mats and the aluminum trim. I'm also a big fan of this steering wheel. It's Vanderhall's own creation, and it's very, very good looking, a nice retro style to it. Now, from here, you'll notice the transmission. It's a bit of a sticking point for some power sports enthusiasts, but the Vanderhall is currently only available with an automatic transmission. Though you'll notice luxuries like heated seats. And again, this is a pretty luxurious vehicle by Vanderhall standards. Supposedly it's one of the highest content vehicles they've ever produced. So it has features like heated seats, a Bluetooth stereo system. It comes across as a pretty nice luxury focused package. I do like these door pulls. Now, the Carmel actually has this large pulled back windshield, so you don't have to wear a helmet when you're inside this thing, though they did stow some goggles in the glove box for me just in case I wanted those. Though for the time being, I'm rolling around no helmet, no goggles, and I've been pretty comfortable driving this thing all day. So we can revisit the interior in a little bit. Let's talk about what's under the hood of the Vanderhall. And to get there, you have to go through the glove box, and the hood release is actually in here. Now, for people who know a lot about Vanderhall, this is a bit different because it actually has a conventional hood. Now, on previous Vanderhall models, this whole front clip was a giant clamshell that had to be unbolted and removed to access what's going on under the hood. All right, lightweight composite bodywork. This thing only weighs like 10 pounds. That's why it's so flimsy right now in the wind. So, under the hood is a new engine for Carmel. Now, previously, Vanderhall used a 1.4 liter General Motors turbocharged 4-cylinder engine. This is a newer 1.5 liter General Motors turbocharged 4-cylinder engine. It produces 194 horsepower, which is a 14 horsepower bump over previous models, which makes this thing pretty agile. Now, of note is that while there are a lot of General Motors parts in all Vanderhalls, Vanderhall does a few tweaks here and there. So this engine has their own intercooler, tune, and crucially exhaust and header system, which is why it terminates in these cool side pipes on either side. Now, it's worth noting that the General Motors engine is paired to a General Motors transmission, and that is the GM 6T40. It's a 6-speed transverse automatic transmission made for front-wheel drive platforms like this. Another key Vanderhall thing to talk about is the suspension. Because it's a three-wheeler, it's obviously very different from most normal passenger vehicles. Now, the suspension is Vanderhall's own design. So the front suspension is a double wishbone setup, though instead of a traditional upper tower like you might find in most sports cars like a Mazda Miata or 370Z or a Corvette or whatever it may be, it has that double wishbone car, they instead use this cantilever setup where the upper arm is basically on this cantilever that allows it to go up and down. Now this is a clever bit of packaging because basically in order to keep the hood line nice and low, they can't have a traditional upper suspension arm bolt here into the front subframe. So this cantilever is a brilliant piece of packaging, and it's part of the reason why this car is so low to the ground. Out back, motorcyclists are going to be very familiar with what you're seeing here. Now this is a motorcycle-inspired rear swing arm suspension. So basically there's this single arm that kind of acts like a single-sided control arm that goes up and down to articulate, and that up and down movement is controlled by this adjustable coilover with a single eyelet up here. Eyelet up here, adjustable ride height here. And obviously this gives you very easy adjustability if you want to change out spring rates, doing sort of tuning like that. This swing arm design is Vanderhall's own. With previous Vanderhall products, I've given them a lot of leeway because they are a small boutique manufacturer out of Utah, but I have to point out that this particular Carmel is not exactly the best demonstrator. Apparently, according to Vanderhall, this is one of the original test cars for the Carmel platform, and it's a bit rough around the edges. Sure, the paintwork is beautiful, but take, for example, the hood. Because it's made of composite and it's over a hot engine, it's actually warped. So the warped hood is a bit of a teething issue, though Vanderhall says regular production models will feature a traditional cross brace under the hood to keep it more rigid and prevent it from deforming like that. There are a few other issues as well. You notice when you're driving that there's the occasional bump, rub, and scraping sound coming from this thing, as well as a bit of rubbing in the interior materials. Again, I suppose it's kind of par for the course when you're buying one of these boutique, small, hand-built sports cars. Walking around the Carmel is all well and good, but you have to know how it drives, right? Because if you're dropping 38 grand on an auto cycle, a weekend toy like this, it has to be fun, it has to be interesting, it has to be different. Now, I think the different side of things they definitely have covered because this looks like nothing else on the road, obviously. It also kind of drives like nothing else on the road. It has two wheels in the front, one wheel in the back, and crucially, it's front wheel drive. So you have this sensation of the front end just pulling the car through corners. Holy crap. So the big difference here in the dynamics department is the new engine under the hood. Actually now a hood panel, not just a giant clamshell. Now 194 horsepower is something this small is terrifying. And it sounds terrifying. Listen to it. Vanderhall says this thing will do 0 to 60 in 4.5 seconds. And onto a top speed of 138 miles an hour. So, they've heard enough people say this thing will be cooler with a manual. It's up to you, prospective buyers, to voice your opinion on that. But for the time being, this automatic transmission, it's quick to downshift. It really keeps the turbo engine spooled up and ready to go. Oh my God. Because it's automatic, it has a manual mode. And you see shift paddles right here, but you really don't have to use them that much because the kickdown is so sharp and so immediate. Using the paddles is more for kind of cruising around town to have fun. But if you're jamming on a back road like this, it kicks down really fast and keeps this thing going. Oh my God, it just sounds brutal. Now, fortunately, this thing has traction control and ABS, so it's probably not going to kill you in the corners. Though it gives you a sensation that it might, which is really fun. Oh my God! Wow! It's funny, torque steer is not usually an endearing trait for most, but in this thing, it's really exciting. I think because your butt's so close to the ground, you really feel the sensation of this thing just pulling you. Now, being a boutique, small manufacturer, you can configure your Vanderhall in many different ways. This car has the upgraded 19-inch wheels, the 9-spoke wheels, they look quite nice. Behind them are the standard brakes and not the optional big brake kit. Of course, this thing being so light, it doesn't need that much brakes to begin with. But it's worth noting that these single piston calipers are the base brakes. A big brake kit is available. Now, last year, I drove the Venice Speedster, which was the lightest Vanderhall available. I believe it's over 150 pounds lighter than this thing even, weighing it right around, I believe, 1,500 or 1,400 pounds. And even with less power, that actually felt more raw, of course, because this Carmel is actually a higher contented, more luxury-focused version of a Vanderhall. So, it actually has seating for two. Everything's wrapped in leather. The switchgear is nice milled aluminum. There's a little nice aluminum trim in this thing. And, crucially, it has two cup holders. One for each passenger. How nice. So, for a luxury-focused vehicle, I need to be completely transparent. This early build Carmel is a bit rough around the edges. There are a lot of squeaks and rattles when you're driving this thing, and I actually think the left front brake caliper is currently sticking. Now, Vanderhall says all this stuff will be sorted out when the regular production models are sold to customers, and that this was one of their dev cars. This is kind of one of the Carmels they used to really develop this model. So it's been around the block. I mean, this car has 2,000 miles on it, which for a car isn't very much, but for a Vanderhall is quite a lot. And I have to admit, at low speeds and around town, the buzziness and the vibrations were pretty disheartening, especially for how expensive this thing is. But it really kind of seems like once you get up here in a winding road, I'm really tempted to forgive a lot of these sort of foibles that come with a small boutique hand-built three-wheeled motorcycle, because it's really enjoyable to drive in a canyon road. Now, interestingly, looking at this speedometer, I'm not actually going 2020 Vanderhall Carmel is not without its flaws, but it is a very enjoyable vehicle to drive in a very uniquely Vanderhall sort of way. Now, if you're interested in checking out a Vanderhall Carmel, well, that's where things get a little bit tricky, because for the time being, Vanderhall products are mostly sold at power sports stores, places where you buy ATVs and UTVs and things like that. So if you'd like to find a Vanderhall distributor or dealer near you, click the link in the description down below. And thank you very much for watching. Please stay tuned for more awesome vehicle reviews where I go drive more awesome vehicles. All right, see ya.